Trailblaze level 40 seems to be the point where everybody's aiming for, and once you get to 40, yes, you can start farming 5-star artifacts, or relics in this case. And a lot of individuals are going to focus on that. I've mentioned numerous times that once you hit 40, I do believe that relics are essentially going to be a waste for you. Your biggest issue and hurdle would not necessarily be relics, but instead traces. You unlock so many different possible upgrades for all your characters that if you want to upgrade a main team of 8 units, hypothetically in my case, Yanqing, Tingyun, Bailu, and then Fire main character, you are going to need so many resources because yes, on one hand, you have the skills and the ultimates, or even in some cases, the basic attacks for your support that are going to need to be upgraded. But if you're a Genshin Impact player, you may notice that a lot of the traces you want to unlock feel like they should have been passive. This could be a 6% attack increase or a slight crit damage bump. And even though these are minuscule in the grand scheme of things, one of those things could be something that's incredibly important for your character's damage. Maybe it's a crit damage bonus on somebody like Zila. And so even though long term you're going to unlock these, the requirements for it is so high because every one of the units you're likely building up is going to need stuff from a different path because they're likely going to be different paths. If you have Bailu Natasha, that's 2 abundance path characters you have. But if you're going for the DPS units like Yanqing, like Zile, that's going to be hunt stuff you're needing. Asta and Tingyun, your supports may be wanting stuff from the Harmony path. And sure, you may not get all of their abilities and you may not get all of their traces, but the ones you will need mean that you're spending about 10 stamina in each place. So I'd say before you hit AR 40, before you hit Trailblaze level 40, you should have already begun following the lower rarity versions of those trace mats, especially because these mats are shared with the light cone. So yes, you do have the benefit of farming them both at the exact same time, but if you are doing it individually, the 40 stamina you spend on one 5-star relic is going to equal far more value for your trace and light cone experience, especially because your relics do build off these stats, but these are guaranteed upgrades. So I would always recommend before you get to 40, once you hit 40, you should continue farming these up. And if you already think you have enough to at least get your main character's skills, ultimates, or talents up, my recommendation to you would be once you hit 40, you should start farming up the primary essential materials for your characters. Yes, I know if you're pre-40, you're only getting 2, and if you're post-40, you're getting 3. But the cost of these long-term is going to add up, and I think you would much rather spend the stamina you have now on those, and once your team is built to a strong baseline, then start farming relics. You don't want to be in a situation where you farmed relics, you don't have enough experience to get them up, and then subsequently you also don't have enough stamina and resources to build up your traces, and the content you're doing is so difficult that you can't push through it. Because then it's just opposite account loading, and I don't think that's very fun. If you have the battle pass, I do believe this next issue will be alleviated, but I think it's still worth considering. If you have nothing else to farm, let's say hypothetically you have no time and you really don't want to focus on relics, please just farm credits. Credits and experience, arguably more importantly experience, is a big issue because you need the experience for light cones, the experience for your characters, and then the credits for both of them. And even though, yes, you can salvage relics, and Forgotten Hall and the Memory of Chaos all do give you relic experience, the light cone experience you need is going to go up exponentially. And if you're building up multiple characters, that's going to be spread across 8 units in tandem with the character materials, or more specifically, that experience. Once again, the battle pass alleviates this to some degree, but not to the extent where I'd say it's perfectly okay to ignore it entirely. At the very least, if you have the time and you are in between farming stuff and you don't really know what you want to do with your account or who you're going for next, farm that up because it's generally useful. Ideally, I would say if you are unsure of who you're building next, of who your end goal is, maybe who you like and who you don't like, I'd say just go through the materials for each path, such as the arrowheads for the hunt characters, and just farm each one of them out a day. So you go through them all, you spend all your 180 stamina on one of those paths just to collect the resources and have them in the future. But hey, that's enough about that. Let's instead talk about your teams, because I've mentioned previously that you do want to have 8 teams in total, but I know a lot of you may not actually want to build out 8 teams because maybe you don't like 8 characters. The safe and assured choices are to build out your healers. Natasha and Bailu, if you have them, are obviously going to be used for long term. You don't have to like them. Bailu's revive is going to be incredibly useful, especially as you start pushing into harder stages. And I would say that if you are having issues with content, specifically maybe you can't clear a simulated universe, or maybe you are trying to push into Forgotten Hall in the later stages in particular, understand that, at least for me personally, leveling up 4-star relics won't necessarily be that much of a damage loss or an issue because it's going to take a while for you to actually get 5 stars worth your time. If you have some amazing 4 stars with great substats, roll them. You're gonna need to anyway. I mean, if you're gonna spend the resources on a 5-star, just do it for a 4-star that can get you over the line, and then wait until you're actually ready to invest that much into farming relics. Once again, I don't think it's that big of an issue. I just think that a lot of individuals who are from games like Genshin Impact do understand that 5-star artifacts are kind of the main deal, but I think as of right now, it's okay to go for 4 stars. Especially because for 40 stamina, it is not worth it in the slightest. Finally, as much as a weird moot point as this is, I do want to acknowledge the fact that I don't think it's worthwhile for a lot of individuals to at least hunt, in particular, for the guides for characters when if you are pre-level 50, you likely don't have the resources or the relics and materials to build them out properly. I think early stages, your level, and if you're playing Simulated Universe, your buffs matter so much more than the gear that you actually have that you really shouldn't focus on that. Instead, I would say get a solid understanding of not only your team, but more specifically, what your teammates do. What does Tingyun do to your team? What is she buffing? How is she buffing? How does she work? If you don't understand the basics of your support units, you won't understand how they work in general. Are you prioritizing getting relics for her? Are you going to prioritize the talent? Are you going to prioritize instead the light cone? Which one affects her buffing capabilities the most, or do none of them do? And this seems like it's going to be a moot point to mention, but something else I'd like individuals to consider, long-term at least, is that this isn't Genshin Impact, unfortunately. If you played this, and I mean for the individuals who can play this consistently every day as long as you can, you know that realistically, you don't get much to do once your stamina is gone, because you have those mob performing routes, but you don't have chests. You don't necessarily have exploration. There is a limited number of chests in each region to an extent to where you're likely going to collect all of them, and the most exciting thing for you may be warp trotters, but once you're at a certain strength point, you can auto battle everything. The more characters you have and try to build up, the more spread thin your resources are going to be. If you know you're skipping Jinyuan, if you know you're skipping Kafka and so many other units like I am, that's fine, but if you are going for a character next patch, if you are hoping for a Tingyun, or maybe you are hoping for a new unit, I want Arlen, then you don't really have the ability to test out different units. If I were to hypothetically go for Jinyuan next banner, I wouldn't have built up anyone past Asta because I don't need them all. Actually, even Pella, anyone after that is pretty much useless to me as of right now. I think it's important to understand the value of the characters and also consider what you have. If you have a Japard, if you have a Bronya, you may not necessarily need as many support units, and it may not be a good idea to build somebody like March 7th when Japard covers that same position. As a side note, I would like to say thank you to everybody for the immense support I've received in light of the previous videos, because my god, I was not expecting them to do that good, but thank you nonetheless. If you're looking for raw stats to value, and if you are looking to build your characters out in the future, please read and understand their kits. If I hypothetically just ignored anything about Yanxing's kit and built him the same way I would Zila, wherever she is, I would have built a bunch of crit on him, but I know he gains like 75% on his own, so building a lot isn't necessary. If you're looking for raw stats to really evaluate the viability and improve the damage of your characters, you want either crit rate or crit damage, so crit in general, followed then by damage percent. In this instance, it is the damage of a basic and skill attack altogether. That's just damage percentile on a light cone. And then lastly, you would want to focus on the attack percentage of a character, because attack percent can be supplemented by other units. Maybe you're getting a character who buffs that damage or attack percent. Maybe you're just getting that buff dramatically because you defeated an enemy and using a light cone that benefits from that. At the end of the day, crit is going to be your highest priority for light cones in particular. Because the experience you have is so limited, you don't want to be in a situation where you have a bunch of light cones leveled up that you're never using. Either way, in general, my advice would be please take the game slowly. Log on, do your things, maybe set what you want to farm out, but don't rush through it, because if you rush through it, you are not going to have a good time, because you're going to hit that brick wall towards the end game, or at least towards mid game, like a lot of players who have to. And as a result, you're going to find yourself sitting around with not much to do. And if you're wondering why a lot of people are complaining about that, it's because a lot of individuals did rush through it. We want to play more of this game, but the story isn't that long and the content isn't enough to allow us to do so. And we also aren't high enough level to actively participate in the end game without absolutely going into defensive mode, because we don't have the damage to do so. But tell me your thoughts and your experience. I've been enjoying this game a lot. I still play Genshin on the side. I still play other gacha games, but as a result, I want to understand what others are feeling and what stage of the game you're at right now. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.